my final question before we go deep into some Aotearoa sporting matters, if we weren't kind of going deep already, and this does involve my melancholy vibration, putting it on to nature, because I do have a certain disdain for England sport, despite being half English myself. Maybe that's where it stems from.
Self-loathing or something. Yes.
Is there anything you actually dislike about the England Test team with Brendan McCullum as coach?
Yes.
What?
I would say there's two things. One is just a minor one, which is that I think they're too inflexible. Like I think the dedication towards attacking cricket is good and noble, but like you are allowed to have those times where you just sit back and try to grind through a difficult period. You don't have to slap your way out of it, which I think India seemed to learn that when we beat them 3-0 in India, thinking back to brighter times recently. Like they seemed to play, it seemed like they were playing a lot like that same kind of very prescribed way of like, we have to play in this style. And it sort of suited it. Well, I'd say it did suit the players that India had in that squad. It just didn't suit the conditions that they had or the team they were up against. So unfortunately for them, that got them swept. And England have had similar situations in recent years where it's felt like you're just being a little bit too fundamental about it. You're allowed to have some flexibility and still retain this identity. It's fine. You're not like betraying yourselves. But that's just a minor one, because ultimately I think that the fact that they know who they are as a cricket team is a very good thing. Whether you want your team to play like that or not, there's no doubt that it's a commendable way to approach way to approach any sporting situation, is at least having a sort of having your idea of what you're trying to go out there and achieve. But there is one very specific thing that I can't stand about them, which is just the way they talk. And it's not really Brendan McCullum, it's a little bit more Ben Stokes, and absolutely a lot more just the English media around them, which maybe needs to be separated a bit, except for the fact, because that's not the team who's doing that, that's the reaction to the team. But I think someone like Ben Stokes keeps saying dumb things, which add into this and lead the media down that path. So,
what has he said like in New Zealand?
Well, there was, I think there was a well-publicized thing recently about him having a whine about like, I don't pay attention to the World Test Championship, and we're not worried about that. And there's all the, it's just good for Test cricket kind of things, like win or lose. But it's nice, but also it's dismissive. I think it's kind of like you don't pay attention to the World Test Championship standings because you're not in contention to make the World Test Championship final. Like I think most people, especially, well, it's a little bit different in New Zealand because we have more of an attachment to the Test Championship because we won it that time, so we need it to be a big important thing. But I'd say most cricket fans around the world probably agree that the Test Championship has done good things for the sport. I find there is an air of I don't know, a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of holier than thou aspect about I'm talking specifics and examples, but that might not be the best way to go about it, because then we can argue semantics about it. I think there's just more like there is that sort of arrogant, holier than thou element to how that comes across, maybe whether it's intended or not, which I don't like, you know. But I also try to ignore because I don't want to get swept up in those kind of things where it's like you're not reacting to the right thing. Like watch the cricket. Don't worry about the interviews afterwards, you know. I have to try to catch myself in those moments.
Well, I don't dislike anything. Like I don't find anything to dislike about this England team. And yes, I've gone through the motions, right? Because I start with a disdain of England sport. So I find things to fit that disdain. But having had the England experience over the past week, just and watching them, and if I was an England cricket fan, I'd enjoy watching them. And like a lot of the England media is a different story. Some
Yeah.
of the semantic stuff, like whatever, like athletes say weird shit all the time. They just say shit to fit whatever ideas they're pondering, as we do. Like, I don't really care what they say, but it's it's just a team that knows what they do. They want to play this way. That's what they do. Like, it shows you how stuck in the mud so many thoughts and ideas about cricket are. It's like the pandemic. You know, the pandemic came and it just totally changed everything for what? Like, everyone had laptops before the pandemic. Pandemic comes, now everyone has Zoom and everyone works from home. And suddenly the pandemic comes and we change all the rules about sport. Like, there was a lot of weird stuff happening from the pandemic that showed you, like, why are we doing it this way? Yeah, it's a cool thing to say. Jacob Bethel doesn't have a first-class century. Like, what's he doing? Yeah, we've poked fun about England selecting players haven't done nothing in county championship cricket. But essentially, it's just a team that plays a certain way that wants players to play that way. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with whatever England are doing. And I've kind of processed all those ideas now to come out the other side where I'm just like, this is just who they are and what they do. I don't actually have any dislike about it. I don't hate anything about it. The cricket's fun from a neutral perspective. Like, you're always guaranteed to have some fun watching England. But if you take away England's general historical, we're the big Donnies of the world status, if you get past that, then you just see a cricket team that is just trying to do what they want to do. The only pesky thing is that McCullum and Stokes are Kiwis, and like, McCullum could be the Blackcaps coach, and that would be kind of interesting. But whatever. Most of this, I reckon, stems from the fact that the Blackcaps suck against England. The Blackcaps are 1-5 against England in their last 6 tests. So at some point, as a deep cricket ponderer, when my cricket team only loses to England, that needs to be corrected because they lose to a lot of teams, but in the England matchup, they lose. They're only losing. They're 1-5. Like, it's not like they're winning many tests here.
Yeah, and you remember what happened in the one test that they did win was, could have very, very easily not been a win. That was the Neil Wagner one, wasn't it? The wicket, with what, 2-run victory, 1-run victory, something like that.
1-run victory. England, all their wins have been by more than 5 wickets, more than 200 runs. So England dominate the Blackcaps. That's just straight up and down, full steak and cheese. That is what it is. England test team under Brendan McCullum is far better than the Blackcaps. That is a fact. So instead of me feeling some type of way about it, now the proof is in the pudding, and I'm like, wow. England are just, whether you want to say they're good at test cricket or not, whether we want to say they're good at spin bowling or not, no team is going to succeed in Pakistan when they're destroying the pitch. Like, that isn't a referendum on England. That's a referendum on away conditions and how you can cater your away conditions to be unbeatable. Because shit, New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, any of those teams go to Pakistan and get those conditions, they're probably not winning. So now I'm just like, okay, I've sorted out my personal disdain of England. Okay, now I'm seeing that England is far better than the Blackcaps in this matchup, England versus New Zealand. And then I'm like, whoa, what's my experience of watching the Blackcaps when they play against England? And it's kind of, it's just disgusting. It's a very strong word, but it disgusts me. Because
I felt disgust at times during that first test, so yeah, strong word, but appropriate.
When the Blackcaps come up against England, they suddenly get timid. and they try to do what England do, it's like, I was thinking about the Panthers in the NRL, right? Because we've talked about how the Warriors have kind of adopted a Penrith Panthers style of play, but they, unless it's the second tier team, like, unless Sean Johnson isn't playing, the Warriors beat the Panthers. No, sorry, unless Sean Johnson isn't playing. The Warriors lose to the Panthers because they're trying to do what the Panthers do, but the Panthers are better at it. The way England test team plays test cricket is very different to the way the Panthers play rugby league. But if you're trying to do what England are doing against England, they're going to do it better than you. Not necessarily the smashing boundaries, which to me smells a lot more like bad Blackcaps bowling than England just smashing balls. Like, I mean, Southey's bowling a good outswinger, then he's bowling just one on the hip. What are you going to do with one on the hip? You either turn it around for a single or you smash it for 4, maybe a 6. England are going to smash those balls to the boundary. I don't see the Blackcaps necessarily adopting the England way of batting, but it's like when England did the short ball plan with such clarity, such focus, such preparation, such planning, and then the Blackcaps doing it's like they're just reacting to what England do. And there's this, I think ultimately as I get through my counselling session here, the emotions I'm processing are not necessarily anything to do with England. It's the way the Blackcaps play. It's the way the Blackcaps look when they're playing England. Because they turn to shit. And it's, yes, the Blackcaps turned to shit when they toured Sri Lanka. The Blackcaps turned to shit when they lost to Bangladesh in New Zealand, then when they lost to South Africa in New Zealand, then when they lost to England in New Zealand, then when they lost 2-0, 0-2 to Australia in New Zealand. Like, the Blackcaps have kind of turned to shit in those situations as well, but when they play against England, it just looks and feels completely different. Like, just doesn't, like, all the Blackcaps identity stuff just falls out the window. And they just start playing bad cricket. But again, well, not again, now I'm adding on to that, there's 2 clear themes with the Blackcaps test team right now. That they suck against England, and I am factoring into that into my reaction. Okay, so if Glenn Phillips bats ahead of Tom Blundell, does that make the Blackcaps good against England? I don't think so. How many different captains have been shit against England? Kane Williamson, Tim Southey, Tom Latham. Like, it's not necessarily Tom Latham's issue, because the others were shit against England as well. Yeah, Will Young's the best batter. Maybe he should be in the team. He's not the best batter. Kane Williamson's the best batter, but he's a very good batter who should be in the team. Did he help the Blackcaps get any wins against England recently? Like, the details of this test against England in Christchurch, like, there are a lot of shitty details that people are going to be discussing. Should they change? How are they going to change? What needs to happen? How do they get good at fielding? To me, my interpretation of this matchup is that the Blackcaps just suck against England, and they've been shit against England going back to when they first toured and lost 3-0 when McCullum started. Then they lost the first test at Bay Oval before bouncing back for a 1-run victory. And now they just got smoked to Hagley. Like, all those losses, again, have been by at least 5 wickets or 200 runs. They are big victories. And the only Blackcaps win has been the smallest margin. So we'll get into some of the changes, maybe in the details and the performance aspect. But the biggest issue for the Blackcaps right now is that they suck against England. And then we add on to that there is no home advantage for the Blackcaps in Test cricket. That sounds pretty drastic, a little bit crazy, but it's true. How can there be a home advantage when Bangladesh defeated New Zealand in a test? Blackcaps won the second test, but they drew that series. Now, when South Africa sent their B team to New Zealand, yeah, sure, the Blackcaps won that Test series, honkadory. But when South Africa sent their first 11, that series was a draw. Blackcaps won the first Test, lost the second Test. What happened against Australia? 0-2, lost both Tests. When the Blackcaps, their series victories are against Sri Lanka, who they are historically great against in New Zealand, and South Africa's B team, otherwise they draw series because they lose Tests in New Zealand, there's no home advantage there. So we've got a situation where there are two clear trends, two clear themes about the Blackcaps in Test cricket. They suck against England, and there's not much, I'd say no home advantage for them right now. None of those are conducive with a 3-0 series sweep that people were pondering to help them get into the World Test Championship before this test, right? None of those are conducive with just winning Test cricket against England. Like, this is a recipe for losing Tests, and it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back, but it's just a fascinating situation where, whether it's the day-to-day coverage of a test or many of the reactions to individual performances, guys in form, out of form, maybe no balls, drop catches, all those things are cool, and I understand why they're being brought up. But to me, the headline of the Blackcaps right now is that they're not good. They're not dominant in New Zealand, and I am debating whether there's actually a home advantage for them. Because now they've lost, let me put it this way, they've lost 3 Tests in a row in New Zealand. But we can get into a little debate about any of the details. You know, you're playing, whether it's the Bangladesh series, South Africa series, whatnot, whatever. The Blackcaps have lost 3 Tests in a row in New Zealand. How can there be a home advantage if you've lost 3 Tests in a row? And then you've got the fact that the Blackcaps just suck against England. Those are the major storylines to me. Those are the major headlines about Blackcaps Test cricket. And I think, like, we're working in two different, I've got to keep thinking as I'm talking here, because that's what we should do, I guess. I was thinking, like, there's 2 versions of the Blackcaps, right? There's the Sri Lankan version and the Indian version. They sucked in Sri Lanka and lost 0-2. They were good in India, 1-3-0. So I think a lot of people assumed that the Indian version of the Blackcaps was going to just be the norm, status quo moving forward. But instead, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the series in India was the outlier, and the status quo of the Blackcaps is losing 0-2 in Sri Lanka, losing 5 Tests with 1 victory in their last 6 Tests against England, losing Tests every summer in New Zealand. Like, that has happened. 3 or 4 consecutive summers in a row, the Blackcaps have lost a Test in New Zealand, let alone the fact that they have lost 3 Tests in a row in New Zealand. Wowza.
There is an idea that they got that fits into that I was pondering a lot during that Test match, which is like, how do we go from Sri Lanka, terrible tour, India, outstanding tour, like one of the best, if not the best Test series the Blackcaps have ever had, and then back to seeing what they did against England, where they're just dropping catches and getting out in silly ways and getting dominated with, their bowlers getting dominated in a way where it's just like you're at home in conditions that ought to suit and you're getting slapped around the paddock. So, like, how do you go from these different things? But then this fits into, at the same time, this fits into this wider trend. Like, India went from getting thrashed by us in their own home conditions to straight away beating Australia in a Test match really handily too. I was just like stunned by how how well they played and how well they just blew them away, especially when the first day it looked like they were just going to continue on the way they had been going when they get bowled out for a low total, and then they bowl Australia out for an even lower one, then put up a huge one in response, like, and go on and win that test comfortably. So that was crazy. And then that Sri Lanka team that thrashed us in Sri Lanka just got bowled out for 42 in South Africa. I would say by the South African team that came here and we swept them, except it's not actually a lot of crossover between those two South African squads. But South Africa are very good at the moment, and I will say that World Test Championship context stuff, I actually don't think it now matters what happens with us against England, because I don't think, we needed South Africa to drop test matches against Sri Lanka, and if they're bowling them out for 42 in the first test, and then going on to win that one extremely comfortably, that's just not going to happen. Because I think they also have Pakistan touring South Africa afterwards, and they're probably going to beat them. Like, South Africa just seems to be in a good position right now with their test team, and we're not going to catch them on the test championship ladder.
The South Africa series is different though, because that's in South Africa. And the Sri Lanka, I've been trying to make sense of matters, and I can't. So that's why I'm the volatility of Blackcaps cricket to me fits into the volatility of Test cricket, and that's why Test cricket is awesome right now. Is the results are happening and they're awesome, but so the Blackcaps went to Sri Lanka and got destroyed by the hosts. South Africa destroyed Sri Lanka because they're the hosts. But the Blackcaps winning in India and then India winning in Australia, that's the real interesting point that that's the point I find most interesting, where they have outplayed their hosts by a significant margin. The Blackcaps did it over 3 tests, India did it over 1 test,
and England just did it to the Blackcaps as well, outplayed their hosts pretty thoroughly over 4 days, because it didn't even need a 5th day. They won it that comfortably. So this is the volatility of Test cricket at the moment, and it's probably good to keep the Blackcaps' recent results within that context as well, because it is part of this bigger picture. Which the best theory I can come up with, and I do think this fits this England versus New Zealand narrative, is that it's a bit like the old saying in boxing. We were talking about boxing earlier, so we'll talk about boxing again, where they talk about styles make fights, and it's about the matchups. And I think as far as the Blackcaps versus England goes, that is a bad matchup for the Blackcaps. The Blackcaps, the identity they have in Test cricket and in all cricket is to be the team that's sort of steady. Like, they outlast their opponents, they hang in there, they make fewer mistakes. They're up against a very proactive team in England that's out there looking to dominate them, looking to set a tone, and it makes steady as she goes look brittle. The exact same input is getting a very different output because of the other team's approach. And I think there's teams where England have played against, and that their approach has been exposed in a way just because of those matchups. The Blackcaps are not one of them. When they play the Blackcaps, they make the Blackcaps look timid and weak and skittish in response because of how they play.
I kind of think it's worse because the Blackcaps don't stay steady against England. Their steadiness goes into getting frazzled, which goes into disintegration. Whereas I think if the Blackcaps just stayed steady and hyper-focused on who they are, what they do, and what they're good at, that would be an interesting counter to England. Instead, they move away from their steadiness. They move away from their identity, and that's the key point against the England matchup. England is making the Blackcaps move away from what they're good at. That's the most alarming thing. That's the most disgusting thing about losing 5 out of 6 tests against England and only winning by 1 run in the only win, is that yes, if the Blackcaps, their steadiness might not help them beat England, but I would be able to cop it if they just stuck to their identity and who they are. Instead, they get frazzled. Instead, they get a bit hectic. Instead, the basic skills start to fall away. They drop catches and all the other mishaps that happen. So,
And you know what this sounds exactly like as well as the experience of watching the Black Caps play against Australia through all of the years. Like this is how the Black Caps have always played against Australia, and now suddenly England are doing the same thing. It's not just the losing, it's the way they lose and just seem to like they don't just lose the game, they lose confidence in themselves and how they lose. It becomes almost like a ritual humiliation, although maybe not quite that strong because as you say, I think if they held steady, like this, thinking about this now feels kind of illogical to say because they've lost 5 out of 6 test match against this team and probably should have lost 6 out of 6, except they got a 1-run victory like in the other one. Like there's nothing in that tells you that the Black Caps should be able to run it close against England. And yet I kind of feel like they could have been competitive in most of those games, even when they went to England and got beaten. Like there are a couple of those where they set semi-decent fourth innings totals and England cruised to victory. They just smacked their way through, chased 2, 3, 400, whatever. I can't remember exactly. But like if you know, in theory, you're in that game at that point. Through 3 innings, you're in that game. And that game that we watched just last week, you know, at Hagley Oval there. It's like if they just took their catches when they had England 77 for 4 after setting about 350 out of 349 or something in the first innings, which is a pretty good score at Hagley Oval based on recent games there. That's a good total, just that England went and scored 499, but they got there because the Black Caps dropped like 8 catches along the way. It's hard to make 10 wicket-taken opportunities in an innings of Test cricket. It's a lot harder when you have to make 20 because you don't take the 10 that you create, you know? You don't take those first 10 and you got to keep creating more and more. Like they basically had to bowl that team out twice. Suddenly, if they had taken those, well, they would have probably had a lead of 50, maybe even 100 runs in that first innings, and that's a completely different Test match. Like, yeah, if they do the things they're supposed to do, the things that when the Black Caps are at their best, they do, which is a major part of that is taking their opportunities, not dropping catches, that kind of stuff. I kind of feel like that was a close Test match, and I felt that through a lot of these games against England. So even though they've lost 5 out of 6 and went very close to losing the 6th, it doesn't feel like England are that much better. Like, it doesn't feel like they're that much better talent-wise. It just feels like maybe they're that much better because they've got this tactical trick which works for them, and somehow this matchup against the Black Caps is just terrible for the Black Caps, and they have not yet figured out how to, I don't know, how to repel that, how to repel the just the pressure that England puts upon them, and without them making bad pressure-derived decisions along the way. So, yeah, it seems illogical, but I kind of feel like these teams aren't that far apart, even though England keep thrashing us.
I beg to differ. Like, everything England does forces the Black Caps into that mode. And, like, whip their shit, you're in the contest after day 3. Well, fantastic, you've had a good day 1. It does nothing well, it does something, but it's not like something to hang your head
on.
It's
only as good as the next session kind of thing. You can undo that work very quickly.
And the Black Caps, they'll undo it by a drop catch. They'll undo it by Rachin Ravindra hitting a pull shot straight down the throat of the guy at square leg just after a break. Like, there are a lot of those instances where there is, like, Devon Conway just looking terrible. Tom Latham coming out guns blazing in the first innings and getting out. For some reason, Kane Williamson got out in the 90s. Like, these things, they happen in the games of cricket. But, like, just before Kane Williamson got out in the 90s, they were saying, oh, he doesn't get out in the 90s. Well, what do you know? He got out in the 90s. And those things happen for the Black Caps when they're a bit iffy. I don't think we can take anything away from being in the contest against England. Because if you're in the contest against England, they're in the contest. And if they're in the contest, they're going to smash boundaries. They're going to take wickets. It's just what they do. And I believe in the force that they generate over a game game of cricket. Like if we're talking about the steady Blackcaps, what's a product of the steady Blackcaps? Grinding the opposition down. England ground the Blackcaps down though. England's pressure,
and also England don't get ground down themselves.
Yeah, because they've got the mental state, they've got the focus, they've got the intention and all that stuff to fall back on. Some interesting stuff from the last 3 tests at Hagley. Obviously, we're moving to the Basin Reserve, but I just want to point these things out. England scored 499 in the first innings. That's the only score over 400 runs in the last 3 tests at Hagley Oval. Shoaib Bashir took 4 wickets in the first innings. He's the only spinner to take 4 wickets in an innings at Bay Oval in these last 3 tests. So, like, obviously Jasprit Bumrah is awesome. I don't have the stats right here, but he hasn't been very good against the Blackcaps in Test cricket. I'll pull it up just so we get this factual. He averages over 40 against the Blackcaps, I believe, and like less than 20 against every other nation, which is absolutely ridiculous. Jasprit Bumrah versus New Zealand averages 45. The highest he averages against another nation, test playing nation, is 22 against England.
What? He's so twice as bad against the Blackcaps than anyone else.
And those tests, like 2 out of his 5 tests against New Zealand were in New Zealand. So most of them are in India, I believe. So he doesn't have the playing away factor. So these are his averages against other test playing nations. Australia 18.8, Bangladesh 12.8, England 22.1, South Africa 20.7, Sri Lanka 9, West Indies 9.2, New Zealand 45.4. So forgive me if I'm not afraid of Jasprit Bumrah. Right? Like my personal experience watching the Blackcaps play Bumrah, most recently in India, like, cool. I just haven't seen him dominate against New Zealand. And then he goes to Australia and he dominates Australia, and you're reminded that this dude's awesome. But I don't care what anyone says about Shoaib Bashir. My experience of watching him play Test cricket, he's pretty good. He's like a young, up-and-coming version of Nathan Lyon. He's kind of tall. He gets the same kind of delivery action and bounce and all those aspects. It's the opposite of Bumrah, but it's something interesting because I just saw Shoaib Bashir take 4 wickets in the first innings at Hagley Oval when, Keshav Maharaj took 3 wickets in the second innings for South Africa. Nathan Lyon took 3 wickets in the second innings last summer. That's it. And then Bashir comes and he takes 4 wickets. Now we go to the Basin Reserve, where spinners like a bit of Basin Reserve. Nathan Lyon was awesome at the Basin Reserve last summer. The best bowlers in the Test versus Australia at the Basin Reserve by innings: Matt Henry 5 wickets, Nathan Lyon 4 wickets, Glenn Phillips 5 wickets, Nathan Lyon 6 wickets. So I think we're going to get a bit of Bashir at the Basin Reserve, a bit more of Bashir. And this goes to the other theme, like Blackcap spinners haven't necessarily been great in New Zealand, but touring spinners have been pretty good in New Zealand. Like whenever Nathan Lyon comes to New Zealand, he destroys us. Maharaj was pretty good in that series. Like you've done the historical stats. Like I reckon Murali was pretty dominant in New Zealand. Shane Warne might have been
Murali,
dominant.
Warney, both of them, yeah.
Yeah, so like it's just an interesting dynamic. But now we get to some preview ideas about the Basin Reserve, and it's I had to do a lot of shadow work. Shout out to the audio book that I listened as I was doing the shadow work. Like reflecting on the extremes of Blackcaps Test cricket, because I think that's something that is crept in. Like they lose, then they win. They lose, then they win. They lose, then they win. That's literally their results. And the highs are high and the lows are pretty low. And it's just like, this is a bit too volatile for me. So I had to kind of process that, and then I come out with the, like, you just settle on some clear trends, this is what's happening. And instead of getting caught up in the volatility, personally, I just settle on the Blackcaps have a dubious home record, the Blackcaps suck against England. We'll leave it there for now. That's how I process the my reaction, which is just like, whoa, this is a whirlwind of volatility. It's also quite complex for the Blackcaps team. Conway looks pretty shit again. So, and Will Young, like, I was happy, it was all good that he wasn't in the team for the first game, under the umbrella that if someone doesn't score runs, he's going to be in the team. Like, he's putting the pressure on. Daryl Mitchell scored runs, shout out to him. Devon Conway looked pretty crap again. Like, they don't get more timidity, frazzled Blackcaps than Devon Conway opening the batting right now, but that's all right. So do you open the batting with Will Young? That could be interesting, but Will Young, I think he averages 15 at the base in reserve. We have to wait and see what happens there. Then we've got, yeah, you got this Tom Blundell situation. I don't think they'll drop Tom Blundell in this series. Sure. If you want to put Glenn Phillips a spot ahead of Blundell, happy days. You can do whatever you want with the order, but again, I don't think that changes the Blackcaps dynamic. Changing the batting order does not change the vibe of the Blackcaps against England. Like, the Blackcaps won't just suddenly look staunch, hearty, steady, tactically astute, and switched on, focused if Tom Blundell is batting 7. Like, I don't know if that's going to change much, but yeah, you can make that change.
You either don't score runs at 6 or you don't score runs at 7. Like, either way, you don't score runs, right?
Yeah. I think if Blundell keeps on sucking, which, let's see what he averages at the Basin Reserve, a big old 55.1.
Home ground.
We have to wait and see. And shout out to Conway. Conway averages 46 at the Basin Reserve. Will Young's literally the only Blackcaps test batter right now averaging below 29 at the Basin Reserve, and he's averaging 15, but I want him in the team. So this is how complex the Blackcaps first 11 is right now. It gets a whole lot more complex. I don't think Tim Southee's a first 11 player right now. And if the Blackcaps want to win, I think they need Mitchell Santner, given what I just said about spin at the Basin Reserve, and given the skill set that Santner has. Like, this is an interesting thought. If I'm saying that maybe the Blackcaps just need to believe in their steadiness a bit more, embrace their steadiness, hold steady to their steadiness, I think Santner's a good dude for that. Because he's a good white ball bowler, so he knows how to bowl against batters who are trying to attack him. He's a tall spinner, so he gets the Basin Reserve bounce. He is an accurate spinner. So he can maybe build a bit of pressure. Play into, like when Ravindra got out, it was all about playing into the ego, right? Like, we're going to bowl short, we're going to put the lads back, you're going to hit the ball to those lads. That's what is going to happen. If Santner's just bowling accurately, with his variations, with his changes of pace, changes of flight, stuff that makes Santner such a good bowler in T20s and ODIs, and pretty good recently in Test cricket, because his last 2 years of Test bowling are his best years of Test bowling, select them. Embrace it. I think it comes at the expense of old mate Southee, and when Southee announced his retirement, it was packaged as he will bow out at Seddon Park, his home ground. The end of an illustrious career. If the Blackcaps are trying to win tests, I don't think Tim Southee's in the first 11 right now. That's just how it is. So I don't know if we're getting the celebration at Seddon Park, you know what I'm saying? Because the only way I can see it happening is if they lose the test at the Basin Reserve, and then they're like, shit, we're losing, so we might as well just let Southee bow out in the first 11. But I don't know how you can watch that test at Hagley and be like, yeah, we We're going with Southey. I don't know how you can do that. We're big fans of Southey, but I just don't think he's a first 11 player right now.
Well, I mean, he did take 2 wickets in the first innings, which is the first time he's taken 2 wickets in a Test match innings for, I think, 6 matches that he's played. So, he's coming back to form.
Well, congratulations. You got 2 wickets.
They hadn't done that for a while.
He's just he's not consistent enough. And Will O'Rourke called himself a spray can, right? Like we talked about in the bonus podcast last Thursday. He's a spray can. He's going to bowl wild deliveries. He's also going to bowl wicket-taking deliveries. Matt Henry is the accurate pressure-building seamer. Nathan Smith is like a pretty handy third seamer. And then I think you've got 2 good spin options, Glenn Phillips, Santner. Southey, he's not bowling accurately enough to do his 129 kilometers per hour thing against England. Like, he's got the swing if conditions are conducive. He's got the nibble. But he's now, in my ratio of bad balls per over, now it feels like he's bowling 3 bad balls an over instead of maybe 0.5 to 1. Will O'Rourke, the spray can, he can bowl maybe 4 bad deliveries an over and 2 wicket-taking deliveries an over. Southey might bowl a wicket-taking delivery, but it's like pressure building, repetition of line and length, which England are going to eat up, because if you're repeating your line and length, they're going to smash you. Just feels like Southey's bowling a few too many bad balls, and I want Santner in the team for the Basin Reserve. Like, who's the dude you drop? To me, it's Southey. And that's where we're at. And that obviously makes for a fascinating dynamic for the Basin Reserve and then Seddon Park.
Yeah, it's a frustrating one, but that question of who's the one you drop is an interesting one, because you could bring in Santner for any number of players. You could the straight swap would be Santner in for Phillips, but I don't think that makes any sense. But you could
the straight swap is Santner in for Conway, and then we get Santner opening the batting in Test cricket, which I think is, I don't know how to describe it. I think it would just be one of my greatest cricketing moments, because it will be like a culmination of everything I've watched about Plunket Shield, where it's like Santner's back in Northern Districts. He's batting 4 behind Kane Williamson. And it's like, wow. And then you got Santner opening the batting, lefty, so he's replacing Conway. He can actually build out an innings, because down the order he's got to be a bit more attacking. You got an opening, but oh, wow. It won't happen, but just open a can of worms there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was trying to open a can of worms, but that was a different one than what I was aiming for. I was going to say you could bring in Santner for Conway, but then have maybe Ravindra open, or maybe Tom Blundell's opened in Test matches before. Maybe you say, well, you're getting out cheaply anyway, so let's see if you can buy some runs at the top. Like, that's literally an idea that they've gone to before in the middle of a series when they were struggling against Australia, or the second Test. It's okay. We're going to drop Jeet Raval. Tom Blundell, what do you reckon? Can you open in Test matches? Scores 100 at it scores 100 in Melbourne at the MCG. So that wasn't a version of Tom Blundell that survived. Like, that was a bit of a one-off innings, but it was a great innings, and he does have some back up there. The alternative is you could bring Santner in for Blundell, and Conway has to stay in, but Conway's price of staying in the team is you have to wicket keep. And Tom Blundell, frankly, because it's one thing to say his batting's regressed, because it very clearly has. His wicket keeping sneakily has regressed as well. He's been dropping some catches, and it's not been pretty throughout the last 3 series, really. And because it was less so in India, just because everyone seemed to play really well in India, but in Sri Lanka he was kind of bad with the gloves, and those are very different conditions than what he's used to. But he dropped catches, multiple catches in the England stuff as well.
You know, the T20s against Australia where Devon Conway got injured? I think it was at Eden Park, and it might have been a leg side delivery, maybe a wide one on the offside. And he got injured because the ball smashed his hand. It was just a delivery that went straight through the batter, comes to Devon Conway. He drops the ball because it smashed his finger or his hand or something. That, I was reminded of that when Tom Blundell dropped their leg side delivery, and it like he dropped it, but then he started shaking his hand, and it turns out that was a nick, but they weren't going to review it anyway because no one appealed. So again, that's some of the just like strange Blackcaps antics that happen when they're playing against England and under pressure. But to me, I took that as like, this is how you know when a wicketkeeper's either A, not a certified wicketkeeper, or B, out of form. When they not only drop a catch, but they're visibly hurt after dropping the catch, because that means they got smashed on the finger. The ball didn't go into the middle of their gloves. They didn't watch the ball into their gloves where all the padding and the webbing is. The ball hit their finger instead of them catching the ball. And if the ball hits your finger, you're going to get hurt. And that's how Blundell reacted. That was the result of Conway. That's why I'm a bit iffy on Conway, because there's a few of those instances where it's like, yeah, you can do a job, you just don't feel like a certified wicketkeeper. But on the point of Blundell's wicketkeeping, I reckon they just leave him in the series, and then we start to get Mitch Hayes selected for Test series moving forward. I think that is going to happen unless Blundell pulls something out of his backside.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative, if you don't think Hayes ready quite yet, where he's, only had one Blackcaps series so far, would be maybe you lean on someone who has some international experience, like a Dane Cleaver, or did Cam Fletcher play any international stuff? I can't remember. He got selected. I think he only got selected in the test team and didn't actually play, though. But there are a couple of guys who are...
He's not playing for Auckland right now. So Quinn Sund is the...
likely injured.
Yeah, so he's probably injured. On the wicketkeepers, though, New Zealand is... Well, to be honest, we've got a lot of great players below the Blackcaps that I will want to talk about in a jiffy, but you got Max Chu for Otago, Mitch Hay for Canterbury, Ben Pomare for Northern Districts had a fantastic outing recently. Then you got Cleaver and Fletcher's at Auckland, but he's out injured, so you got Quinn Sund, a younger wicketkeeper batter there for Auckland. Between Chu, Hay, and Pomare, those are three really good up-and-coming wicketkeeper batters who are going to play a lot of cricket, I reckon, for New Zealand over the next 5 to 10 years.
And these are, they have options. That's the thing. It's just a matter of like how the Blackcaps standard thing is to stay true to their guys and give them an opportunity to play themselves back in. As we saw how long it took for Henry Nicholls to play his way out, and generally speaking, that's a good thing because you got to have a little bit of trust in your dudes. Yeah, it's what McCullum does as well. So it's saying we selected these guys because we think they're the best ones, and we're not going to be swayed by short-term form, even sometimes mid-term form, because we know the caliber of these players. Unfortunately, I think with someone like because I was reminded watching that test match about your point about Conway getting the casual contract at the same time as Kane Williamson and being like, these two have not given equal service to get equal, whatever service, whatever the opposite of services benefits from the other side. Benefits, yes, there we go. Like, it's not the same thing. And I think at this stage, we've arguably seen more years of bad Conway in Test cricket, or at least subpar kind of stuff, than we have the first couple of years of spectacular Devon Conway. And it just seems like it just seems too obvious that he's been figured out and he gets out in the same ways. And he's getting out in ways that are atypical of the opening batter as well, which is just not, getting out caught and bowled and his leading edges and stuff like this we don't need to see that at a time when just quietly Tom Latham's not exactly been producing or churning out runs at the same rate that he has in the past either. He's been a little bit better than Conway, but it's not been quite the same thing. And there was someone on the various, on the Cricinfo live commentary stuff where they get the comments, and someone had messaged in there saying gee, that India series really papered over a lot of cracks for the Blackcaps. And I kept seeing that being international cricketing, I don't know, writers, observers, whatever, reacting to that this is crazy. Who is this idiot trying to say they beat India in India and you're acting like they're suddenly a bad team? And yet all the New Zealanders responding to that were being like, no, actually it's true. And I think it is true. Like you had a lot of players who were out of form before, who are still out of form now, were part of a victorious series in India. That was cool. But like, especially, I mean, first of all, they were picking a different bowling lineup. Southee didn't play a couple of those games, so their most out of form bowler wasn't involved. So yeah, that's shielded from that. And then the other guys who were struggling mostly are batters. And that was a series in India where runs were not of the same, runs weren't flowing in the same way. The currency of the runs wasn't the same. It was a low scoring series. So the problem of having guys scoring lower scores is not as significant because everyone's scoring lower scores. It's the difference between Conway getting out cheap and someone else getting 50 or 60 is not the same as Conway getting out cheap and Harry Brooks scoring 170, So they're just, I don't know, they've gone back to being, certain problems in the team have been exposed again in a way where they weren't so much in India, and we were able to play around that. That was sweet as. It was a brilliant series, but this is more like what we've seen the trajectory of them for the last 12 months, and I'm not seeing a way out of it for Conway or Blundell at the moment, quite frankly, and that is a little bit of an upsetting thing. But also, I'm seeing a way out of it for Southee because he's retiring. He's already he's stepping off the bus. That's all right. We'll see how that goes selection wise, because they didn't play him in the India game, so there is a precedent there. But yeah, frankly, when you have at least three players in bad enough form that you're thinking about, well, maybe they need to be dropped for the next test match. Three players in your 11 who are in that state, and a couple others who it's like, well, we don't need to drop them, but they do need to score some runs / take some wickets soon. Let alone the fact that Blackcaps also had a debutant in the last test as well. Like that as well is not stuff that adds up to a very successful, cohesive test cricket team either. Like you've got. I don't really even think those cracks are papered over. The paper's not holding.
Well, what is the status quo of Blackcaps test cricket? It's mediocrity. The Indian series was the blip on the radar. It was the outlier.
It was
the anomaly. Not just in the this is the Blackcaps test cricket team falling into their groove of being mediocre in New Zealand, generally mediocre, and just bad against England. So how do you get Will Young into the team? Just rapid fire questions here. What are you doing for Will Young?
Straight swap for Conway would be my preference.
What are you doing for Santner, if you want him in the team?
I could go either way on that, but I think I would lean towards not picking him and saying, Glenn Phillips, you took 5 for was it the Basin, the 5 against Australia. So you say you took a 5, you had your best test bowling here last time. We'll ride with that. But I do definitely see the appeal of having him in that test match, specifically for the skill set he offers, which I do think your point about him being able to bowl against aggressive batters is a very valuable one.
What's your digest on Southee?
I think Southee plays out the series. I would like him to, and I expect him to, but I think, the logical thing might be he would be the one who makes way. I do think a retiring player deserves some level of, benefit of the doubt in that case. But you have to be careful about where you draw that line at the expense of the team. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, because there is also, you could just also say it's a straight swap in a way to bring in Santner for Nathan Smith as your number 8 sort of bowling all-rounder. As far as the makeup of the team, that's probably the cleanest move you can make, but we'll see. Because I guess it's not a home ground for Nathan Smith because he's not from Wellington originally, but he's moved to Wellington. He's played his best cricket in Wellington, so it also is the ground where he is. That's kind of the one you want him at if he's going to play any of these games. So these are tricky decisions to be made, and I think the part of the trickiness there is it doesn't address. None of these address the major problem, which is, well, Will Young can address one of the major problems, which is Conway's lack of runs. There's nothing in here that solves the fact that Blundell is struggling though, because there's no other wicketkeeper in the squad. And if you keep Conway in there, then you keep Conway's bat in there. You keep Conway's bat in there, you might as well keep Blundell's bat in there, and you've got an out of form batter either way. So there is a way you can drop both of them, but then that leads to either you have to call up someone from outside, which is easily done. There it's a home series. There's plenty of keepers going around. You can always just hide the drama of it by saying Tom Blundell hurt his thumb. Can't keep. We're going to bring in another keeper as a replacement. You can do that, but I don't. That feels too hectic and proactive for the way that the Blackcaps operate. So, unfortunately, I think we're going to have at least one or not two of these out of form issues, if not all three, in the squad or in the 11 for the second test.
I think the point for the Blackcaps of giving their players a long leash and showing faith in them, that is expired. Tom Blundell's been out of form for a long time. Devon Conway has been out of form for a long time. Devon Conway has 2 years averaging over 40 and 2 years averaging below 40. 2 years averaging below 35. He's been out of form for a long time. Southey, everyone's been talking about him being out of form since last summer. These dudes have been out of form for at least 12 months, and they've been given the faith to this point. So what's another couple of weeks? Southey at the Basin Reserve averages 32.9, which is Sir Richard Hadley averaged 20.2, Chris Martin averaged 29.8, Trent Bolt averaged 27.9, Matt Henry averages 25.5. So it's not exactly Southey's favorite ground. And shout out to Nathan Lyon, averaging 13.5 at the Basin Reserve, as basically the only spinner. But he did well. So shout out to him. Shout out to the Blackcaps, shout out to England. Let me just drop a couple of quick Plunket Shield notes. But the Plunket Shield and even the HBJ Shield, I think these highlight how strong New Zealand cricket is if you can look past the Blackcaps and perhaps the Australian demolition, which I think is coming for the White Ferns. I was thinking, okay, so the biggest story last week for New Zealand cricket essentially was Bevon Jacobs getting an IPL contract. So let me put it this way. New Zealand has two 22-year-old batters. One of them is Bevon Jacobs, who just got an IPL contract, largely thanks to his T20 strike rate of 189. Bevon Jacobs is also averaging 55.8 in first-class batting after 3 games, so small sample size. Forget the stats. New Zealand has a 22-year-old batter who just got an IPL contract out of nowhere, right? So that's cool. Bevon Jacobs, shout out to you. New Zealand also has a 22-year-old batter who is averaging 70.1 after 19 innings of first-class batting. That's the one and only Rhys Mariu from Canterbury, who just his 2 games as captain for Canterbury, he's got 240, 8 not out, 185. New Zealand cricket has a 22-year-old who just got an IPL contract out of nowhere, and a 22-year-old averaging 70 in first-class batting. Whatever holes you want to pick at that argument, or that fact, cool, it's happened. I think that's pretty nifty. I like it. Shows that there's a fair bit of talent on the ground in Aotearoa, but also shout out to Brett Hampton at the other end of the scale, 33 years old. He is Plunket Shield so far. He's averaging 58.7 with a strike rate of 100. This is the Brett Hampton, who has a one-day strike rate of 108.5, and obviously, and his T20 strike rate's actually not that good, 123. He hit a century for Northern Districts with a strike rate of over 100 recently in the Plunket Shield, and he is also... I was looking for him in the wicket-taking charts, and he's at the top. 13 wickets at an average of 16.9. So Brett Hampton, 33-year-old Brett Hampton, in the Plunket Shield this season. He is 235 runs, average of 58.7, strike rate of 100, and he's got 13 wickets at an average of 16.9. Fantastic from Brett Hampton. One of my last favorites, or my last favorite Plunket Shield player, so Rhys Mariu, Bevon Jacobs, and Brett Hampton. Then we got 25-year-old Matt Fisher, who has 10 wickets at an average of 20, and he is a first-class bowling record of 25, averaging 25.1, one-day average of 24.2, and he's probably one of the fastest bowlers on the domestic circuit. I'd say he's probably the fastest young emerging bowler, and he is bowling pretty well in the Plunket Shield right now. He's got 2 wickets, 3 wickets, 1 wicket, 4 wickets. The 4 wickets recently against Otago, a lot of short pitch bowling, hurrying batters up, and he is one of my favourite seamers. And then we've got Brett Hampton. And we've got the 2 batters, Rhys Mariu and Bevon Jacobs, doing fantastic stuff in the Plunket Shield. Let me check in with the Plunket Shield ladder. Northern Districts and CD. Northern Districts are 2 wins, 1 draw. CD, 2 wins, 1 loss. Then we've got Canterbury and Auckland, 1 of each, win, lose, draw. Wellington, no wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. Otago, no wins, 1 loss, 2 draws. In the Plunket Shield, meanwhile, in the Halliburton-Johnston Shield, Otago are 4-0, which, along with lots of good stuff in recent summers, has seen Craig Cumming get a job in England, coaching one of the women's teams in England, so shout out to him. But Otago are 4-0, and where do you begin with all their exceptional performers so far after 2 weekends of Halliburton-Johnston Shield cricket? Otago, obviously they've won all 4 of their games, and they have played Canterbury and Wellington, who are both at the bottom of the table. So obviously losing to Otago isn't going to help their standing, but Otago's kind of put Canterbury and Wellington in their place. Best performers for Otago so far this season. To me, the most outstanding is Bella James, who has a century and a 50 in her 4 innings, 246 runs, average of 82, decent strike rate as well of 88. Bella James she's an aggressive, kind of powerful opening batter who, if the White Ferns really cared about domestic cricket, might get an opportunity in the coming 6 months, but we'll have to wait and see. Don't want to talk up any domestic cricketers' White Ferns hopes at the moment. The Otago also well led by the likes of Felicity Robertson and Polly Ingles. Polly Ingles she had an aggressive knock over the weekend. I think it was a 42 not out with a decent strike rate. You've got Caitlin Blakely, was pretty good in the A series against England off the top of my head last summer. She has a 50 as well. 155 runs, averaging 51, strike rate of 73. So they're all doing pretty well as far as Otago's wicket takers. Louisa Kopkamp was fantastic in the opening weekend. She's got 6 wickets. Hayley Jensen and Eden Carson both have 6 wickets. Carson's come back from the T20 World Cup with the most overs for Otago, tied with Emma Black, but Carson's got 6 wickets at an average of 15, 2.5 RPO. Emma Black's been steady, not dominant as she has been over the last 5 summers. She's got 4 wickets and an average of 30. Bella James and Caitlin Blakely are the most interesting in terms of White Ferns context because they're pretty experienced, mature batters for Otago who have consistently flashed the ability to bat at a higher level, I reckon. So as far as the White Ferns go, I reckon they're the most interesting, but Anna Browning just keeps catching my attention. She did it last summer when she helped Auckland get an epic Super Smash victory over Canterbury at Hagley Oval. Now she's made the move down to Otago, and she is the leading wicket taker for Otago. She's got 8 wickets at an average of 12.8, 4.1 RPO, and she doesn't score big runs. She's only got 52 runs in 3 innings, but she's got a couple of not outs, 2 not outs, which gives her a big average of 52, and she just chimes in with runs. 19 not out in the Sunday game with 1 wicket. Didn't bat in the Saturday game against Wellington, 4 wickets. The Sunday against Canterbury, 32 runs, 3 wickets. Saturday against Canterbury, 1 not out, didn't bowl. She is, and for context, like as we go through the 10-game phase on Cricinfo, her season finished for Auckland with 2 wickets, 1 wicket, no wicket, 1 wicket, no wicket, no wicket, and she had 5 scores below 10 in her last 16 innings with a 19. So she has taken wickets in every innings that she's bowled in so far this season, and she's either scored a 32 or she's finished not out. And I reckon she's a pretty damn good cricketer. So fascinated to see how she develops into the Super Smash for Otago, but also if she can just maintain her constant contributions for the best team in women's domestic cricket right now, the Otago Sparks. Shout out to them.